This lesson is about formatting text with CSS. Now, if we are going to go to the lesson folder, right click, edit with Notepad, and also on style, right click, edit with Notepad. Now, we've seen on previous lessons that we were able to style our text using special tags for bold and italic like B and I. Let's see if we can do this from the CSS, and we also see a couple more things that give us a better control on styling our fonts. So if we are going to take a look here, we can see that we have two main categories, and those would be the font properties and the text properties. Now, the font properties will deal with the font style that you can apply over a font face, and those would be the font family, the font weight, font style, and font size. Of course, there are a little bit more than these properties and values, but when we're going to make the advanced CSS training, then we're going to get back to these properties and we're going to add a little bit more. But for now, let's just take a look on these few properties and values, which are by far also the most used. Now, the font family, as the name states, specify the family of the font, obviously. Now, the fonts can be either serif or sans serif, as we see here. Georgia by default is a serif font, and if we are going to get back to our page, we're going to see that this text is, however, different from this text. Now, the reason for which it behaves like this is that we have in our XHTML file a class defined right about here, and the class properties and values applied to this p tag, which starts here and ends here, applies a different font face to this text. And you can see the Georgia font is somewhat different than the standard font, which is depending on the machine that we have and the operating system, can be let's say for Mac users can be default as Helvetica, and for Windows users can be defaulted as Arial or Times New Roman. But since this actually looks like a serif font, it might just as well be Times New Roman. Now, if I'm going to get back to my CSS code and change this comment, actually we uncommented and comment the other line, so we won't have any kind of issues, then we're going to say that for the same class font, now the font family would be Arial and it is sans serif. And I'll explain why we also have Verda in just a minute, but let's see what happens after we save. We go back. Now take a look at this paragraph. Now it was rendered as Georgia, but after we refresh, it's going to change the way that the font is rendered. That would be because we applied the new value to the font style property, okay, which is this one, font family, sorry. And this one would be the way that the Arial font looks like. Now, if we're going to go back, as I've said, we can see here we have, I'm just going to do it like this for a second. Well, I'm not going to save it or refresh, so we can take a better look of these two. Now, the font family, as I said, is composed of a font family property and the values. Now the value it's separated in two components. The first one would be the name of the font, and the second one would be the class of the fonts from which it belongs. In our case, is a serif font. Now the class of the font and the font itself are separated by a comma. Of course, on the other example, as you can see, we have two font names declared, Arial and Verdana, and then the class font of which they belong to. In this case would be the sans serif. That means you can specify more than one font name. And the reason for which CSS lets you do that is that if you don't have one font, let's say for some reason you're missing Arial, then the CSS loads the second font he finds. So as you can see, this is more like a safety measure. So if I'm going to just delete Arial and save, but first let's just comment this one. Okay, I'm going to get back and I'm going to hit refresh, and the font changed from Arial to Verdana. Obviously Verdana it's a little bit different. It's much more larger font with wider letters. So this is the way that the font family behaves. No matter what, never have two properties stated in the same place. I just did it for the training purpose, but normally you'll be using just one. Okay. Now the other properties would be the font weight, which can be normal, bold, or lighter. So basically, if we want the font to be bold, instead of just going back and adding a B tag which starts there and here, we could do it through the CSS, and we're just going to say bold. Save it, go back and refresh, and my font now is bold. So you can see it's that easy. If you want to be italic, we're just going for the font style. So from normal, we're just going to say the font is italic. Save it, go back and refresh, and our font is also italic besides being bold. Okay, and if we don't like the size, it may be too big or too small, then I'm going to get here. Sorry, at this point it is inherit, and as you remember, when you have a value as inherit, it basically takes the it inherits the property and value, in our case is the value from the parent element, in which the current element is nested. So I'm going to, oops, just my mouse. I'm just going to replace the inherit with the next value. It can be small. Just going to save it, refresh. As you can see, it made the font smaller with some kind of arbitrary value, which you cannot see. You can make it large. Going to refresh. Obviously it's larger. Of course you can make it medium, which as you might have guessed, it might be somewhere the initial state. And if you want to be precise, we're going to use the pixel size. So if I'm going to use 12 pixels, save and refresh, my font will be 12 pixels. If I want to be smaller, let's make it very small. Let's make it 4 pixel and refresh. There you go, you have a very small font. I personally cannot read it, but if you can, whoa, that's something. And of course we can make it large as well. Let's make it 40 pixels. Now it'd be, whoa, very large indeed. So this would be the way you can manipulate. Let's make it a reasonable size, 12 pixels, and refresh. As I said, this is the way that you can control how the font will look and behave on your screen through the CSS. Now, of course, as I said, I can go and mess around with the text values, and the text properties and values would be the color, which is much more important, letter spacing, line height, and text line. Basically, the color, it gives a different color to a text. And as you remember, the color can be specified as RGB colors, naming colors, like I'm just going to say red. Going to save it. Let's first apply also a class here so we can see the difference, which is text, if I remember correctly. Okay, we save it, go back and refresh, and of course my text is obviously red. So I can specify, as I said, some kind of RGB color. As I said, if you remember from a previous lesson, when we dealt with the background color, it was a very good lesson to learn about how to use and manipulate colors. So in our case, we're just using color for the text, not for the background. But anyway, as I said, you can specify hexadecimal values like CCC, which it will be something more like a gray. You can see here. Now, of course, for those who have not seen the lessons, obviously I'm missing 1, 2, 3 letters from the hexadecimal color code. But then again, when you have 6 letters that repeat itself, basically it's the same letter in the entire value stated, then you can trim the other 3 because it's basically paired in 2. So it works like this as well. You can specify it any other color if you like this. I'm not sure what kind of a color, but it probably is towards some kind of darker gray, more dark. You can even do it like this, CCA, which basically means that I have another C and another C and another A. So this is something interesting. But of course, this kind of things I'm kind of hoping I'll be teaching you in the advanced CSS training. But for now, let's resume to our lesson, and I'm going to refresh. And this is again some kind of other strange color, which is obviously not gray, it's some kind of a limeish color. So it looks very nice to me. However, I'm going to go for a name. Orange. Let's see what happens after we save and refresh, and it turns to orange. So that's about with the color. Then you can specify the letter spacing, as I said, and the letter spacing would have 3 values, which is normal, length, and inherit. Normal, it's the default one, which is basically applying no letter spacing whatsoever, other than the original letter spacing that the font itself is provided with. So let's change this from normal to, let's say, 10 pixels. Save, go back and refresh, and now we have a 10 pixels distance between the letters. Of course, it's a little bit too much for my liking, but if you really want to get crazy with it and just increase the size and see the effect. Now look at here. It's very large. Let's just revert back. So 10 pixels would be fine. I'm sorry, let's go back to normal actually. So we have the normal behavior. We save it, go back and refresh. Okay, looks fine. Now let's talk about the other one, the line height. Basically the line height is specifying the line height between the rows, and at this point is normal, but if we're going to change from normal to as you can see here, we have number, length, percentage, and inherit. The number would be, let's say 5. And what it's going to do is going to take the current line height and multiply it by the number you've specified. So if we're going to save it, go back and refresh, this is the result. So basically it took the stated highlight, the current highlight, and multiplied by 5. Of course we can do it by any other arbitrary number. Now let's see if we have a fixed length and let's say 18 pixels. Refresh, and going to see this is the size with 18 pixels, but it's too much. I'm sorry, it's not enough, so you can see a difference, because I think this was the original one. So I'll just place a wacky size, and there you go. Of course, now you have 30 pixels between the lines as line height specified. Of course, you can always do it with percentage. Let's say we do it 50%. If we save it and refresh, this is the amount of size, and basically it halved the original line size. So basically, it took the line size of the specified font and then divided by 2, basically split it in half, and this is what you get. If you want a larger one, just say 200%. So from the original size would be 200% and so forth. Of course, if you just place it inherit, we already know what inherit does, so there's no need to explain any longer. However, I'm going to leave it as 18 pixels. Usually this is the size I'm using it as in general. And the last one would be the text align value, which has the left, center, right, justified, and inherit values. And the text align deals with the alignment of the text. At this point, our text is by default aligned to left. Even if you don't specify it left here, the text will still be aligned to left in our case. But we can align to center, save, go back and refresh. As you can see, now it's aligned to center. We can align it to right. Now the text is aligned to right. And of course we can justify it. And this is a cool one. If we refresh, now you're going to see that the justifying the justify value stretches the text lines, so that each line has an equal width, just like in newspapers and magazines. So basically it fills up the entire width of the container. So with all of this, we're pretty much done with formatting text with CSS.